Hey there, Knicks fans. It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. I'm excited today. This might be my favorite gimmick of the year. We will get to that in a second. But first and foremost, I haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks. Feels like had the Knicks played a basketball game this season before, or this preseason before when we last talked. Jeremy Cohen, hello.
Hello. I don't think so. I don't think they had.
No, I don't think so either.
They had not.
Yeah. So there you go. Voice of God.
There you go. So we're doing Claudio Casino today. Andrew Claudio is behind the scenes, dealing his cards. I don't know what he's doing. Setting his lines. He flew to Vegas just for the recording of this episode, and then he will fly back immediately after we are done recording, just to be in the full spirit of things. Before we get to Claudio Casino, though, a couple quick announcements, and then we're going to just touch briefly on the events of Sunday night, I guess. So announcements. First thing. We actually know that the announcement is coming soon. We can announce right now. First watch party of the year. Shocker. It's going to be for the Celtics game. The opener on Tuesday night, October 22nd, I think is the date, whatever that Tuesday is. And it's going to be at T Squared. We are extraordinarily excited to not only re-up our partnership with T Squared Social, located, of course, on 42nd Street, just down the block from Grand Central for this year, but expand it quite a bit. And we're going to have some more details coming out on that in a short time. But long story short, we're going to be doing some more watch parties. I'm going to be at a whole lot more watch parties. Andrew obviously will be there as well. Jeremy, the whole gang is going to try to get to as many as they can, but we're really trying to blow it out this year and make sure that every Knicks fan in the tri-state area knows that if you're going to go out and watch a Knicks game, there is no better place to do it than T Squared on, again, 42nd Street. So the first one of those dates is in the books, October 22nd, opener against Boston. More details to follow because that night is going to be a crazy night. So definitely get ready for more details. Number 2, our annual KFS outing. So the response, as always, has been overwhelming for that. But apparently, Jeremy, I don't know if you realize this, there's some modicum of excitement about this team in the city, and like tickets are like flying off the shelves as they were. So, we were desperately hoping to be able to get 2 lounges, I guess they're called lounges for the Orlando game on January 6th. The fine folks at MSG were only able to accommodate us for 1. On that note, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we will be going in order of people who RSVP'd for that January 6th game. We do want to have a second game as a result, just given the demand. So here's what we're thinking. We're first going to go to the people who are committed, and we will get that locked in. And then we will have a second game TBD. We will first reach out to the people who are on the wait list for the first game, gauge their availability. Price might vary a little bit just based on the availability of the games. But that's where we're thinking, where we want to be able to do this multiple times now instead of just having 2 lounges for 1 game. So it'll work its way out and hopefully everyone's able to join us. But that's where we're at. So
yes, thank you, Jeremy, for that. More information on the second game potentially and who is going to be going to the first game, all that in the very coming hours shortly. Yes, those are a bunch of words that came out of my mouth. And just a reminder, the watch party for the Celtics game and all of our watch parties at T Squared Social this year are absolutely free. So anybody can come in, hang out, buy a drink, don't buy a drink, whatever you want to do. Although they will certainly be very Festivus. No, not Festivus. Festivus is a Seinfeld holiday.
It's the 23rd of December. Festival?
It is
Festivus?
Festivus? Is that a word?
It's definitely not that one. What are you trying to say here?
They're going to be like a lot of fun, and you're going to want to like drink and be merry and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, no, Festivus. It's joyous. It's merry. That's correct.
Festivus is the word that I was looking for.
Okay. Or Festivus. No, not Festivus. It's Festivus. Festivus is not a word. It is Festivus.
Festivus.
But you're saying, I think it's a different Festivus. That's the problem. Because
Sure.
Festivus is a holiday, yes, but I think it's spelled differently.
I don't know. We sound
No,
like
I think it's actually spelled the same. So it's going great.
we sound like a couple of dingbats.
Festivus for the rest of us. That's it.
My Lord. Oh, Jesus. He can't help us now. Okay, that's enough of the announcements. You want to talk about the DiVincenzo Rick Brunson thing?
Let's do it.
I'll just say at the outset, I said my piece after the game last night. I've thought about it a little bit more today. I'm sure there's like a very obvious, like, oh, he said the thing that he said for this reason, and this is the backstory. I'm not smart enough to have figured it out, so I'll just turn it to you. Like, any thoughts on this? I don't really have any.
Yeah, I mean, briefly, because we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this. I was at the game yesterday, and I was like, close enough where you could hear a little bit of what was happening, and there was some erroneous reporting on exactly what was said, and like what I heard was that Dante DiVincenzo saw Tibbs, and he said, Mudeng isn't that big of a deal. And Tibbs was upset because he's a big fan of Mudeng. And Rick Brunson loves Mudeng because they look alike. And that was the main problem. So it just caused a lot of friction.
I barely get the reference. It's
a pygmy hippo that lives in Thailand.
Which is
adorable.
Aware.
Yeah.
Yes.
But clearly, the conversation about Jalen's my best friend, and I'll deal with it separately with Rick. It's true. I mean, look, our relationships with people who are friends and their parents are likely very different. It's obviously very complicated when that was your former coach as well. But yeah, it's just crazy how that turned out. What was originally looked at as joking was like, oh, whoa, people are actually getting a little contentious here.
I think there is, because I've heard from a couple people who, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I'm feeling a sentiment from some maybe corners of the fan base that feels disappointed or let down that maybe the whole Nova Knicks thing wasn't as big a deal as we made it, as like us, the fans, made it out to be. And thinking back to last season, I'm like, that was the fans were always the ones who made the big deal out of that. Those guys were just thrilled to, I think, happy to play together. But it's we always go back to the saying for a reason. It's sports is a business first and foremost. Guys are gonna go follow the money. Trades happen, all that stuff. I don't take what happened last night to mean everything from last season was fraudulent, or we didn't witness what we witnessed, or wasn't as special of a team as we thought it was in the moment. But like we were saying last night, these are competitors, and stuff happens, feelings get hurt. It is what it is. It's not something that is dwelling with me or staying with me, I guess, is my main thing. But if it's staying with you or dwelling with you, not you, but anybody out there listening, I'm not going to begrudge you for that.
It's also, to your point about the whole Nova Knicks thing, I think it's a great one, because when we view the Knicks in so many ways, it's a parasocial relationship where we are these people who are legitimately friends and they went to college together, or are they people who simply went to the same program and are friends as well? There's a complete difference between the two. And it's nice for us to think of the power of friendship and these common bonds, and we get to bond with those bonds and we live vicariously through them. But yeah, the truth is we have no idea what their relationships individually are like. And whatever we see, or, someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone made a comment that I saw when I was browsing Twitter, where it's it must be bad when Josh Hart isn't talking about anything or joking around about it after the game. And look, maybe that's the case, but we just don't know what their friendships and relationships are like. And at the end of the day, the Knicks made a business decision. They made several business decisions this past offseason. And Dante DiVincenzo is now on the outside looking in of those, as is Julius Randle. And it's easy to speculate. No idea. Absolutely none. But it's a good thing, I guess, that these teams only play each other 2 more times this year, because otherwise it could be a little bit more bad blood than that. But we'll see.
Probably for the best that DiVincenzo didn't get traded to the Nets or something of that ilk. Yes. Okay. That's enough of that. Let us go on to what we're all here for. which is everybody's favorite offseason, preseason activity, whatever it is. Angel Claudio, do you have the hat on?
I am coming to you live from the Vegas Strip, as you probably can't see because we're like not in full screen. There you go.
There it is.
Shout out to Viva Las Vegas. It is very hot here, and I'm just assuming that it is always hot in Las Vegas as I make this announcement. Welcome everybody to your annual Claudio Casino picks. This time we will be making predictions for the 2024-25 NBA season relating to the New York Knicks. If this is your first time coming to Claudio Casino, what happens is the house sets different lines, and Mr. Jonathan Macri and Mr. Jeremy Cohen will make their predictions for the upcoming Knicks season based on said lines. Gentlemen, are you ready for your turn to see how right or wrong or over or under you will be this upcoming NBA season?
I went 8-1 in my football picks yesterday, which is, I'm pretty sure, the best I've ever done on a Sunday of football action. So I am feeling great right now. I'm ready.
I'm not.
Jeremy,
I'm triggered because as someone who a week ago today flew to Vegas and was there for 36 hours for work. I've been there 4 times this year, really in the last 7 months. I don't need to see Vegas again. I don't need to do any more gambling. I don't need to any of those risks. But with that being said, let's do it, Andrew. Let's play Claudio Casino.
So if you'd like to go watch the Claudio Casino picks from years past to see how these two fine gentlemen have done. In fact, I'll just read one. Last year, we asked, how many points per game will Jalen Brunson average this season? The line was at 23.5. Jeremy, optimistic about his captain, didn't even know he was going to be captain yet, and still said, my captain will average over 23.5. John, on brand, took the under, and Jalen Brunson averaged 28.7 points per game last season. Another one. Let's see if I can find another under that's fun.
This isn't going to be good for me.
How many Knicks make the All-Star team this season? This was last year. 1.5. Jeremy took the over. Optimistic about his Knicks again.
Hold on.
John, the under. What?
Go find one that makes Jeremy look like an asshole. Why am I the only one that gets to look like this?
Again, we have brands to support and narratives to uphold, Jonathan.
Also,
Macri.
I just did better overall. If you can't accept the facts, then make your own, I guess.
I have alternative facts. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
There are some RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly lines that are here that we're just not going to go over again this season because it is a new leaf here in the Knicks world. And we will start with our first Claudio Casino line being all about the captain, one Jalen Brunson. How many points per game will Jalen Brunson average this season? A chance at redemption, John. He averaged 28.7 points per game last year. The Claudio Casino line, 29.9.
20, what was it? 20, what point 9? 20.
It is on the screen, Mr. Macri.
29.9? 20. Sorry, I was distracted because I was gonna look for Jeremy's the address of his rental property and then read it out on the air because
all right, Sam.
If you know, you know.
And then I'm gonna show him at your door tomorrow and knock on it and be like, everything's fine. Sorry. So is Jalen Brunson gonna average 30 points? So I looked silly. I looked very silly, obviously, last year, predicting that he wasn't gonna average 23. I feel like this is the right. I think this is the right line, and I'm just a glutton for punishment. I'm gonna go under, and it's obviously has nothing to do with the fact that Jalen Brunson isn't a capable scorer. I would argue that he's one of at this. I went on Fred's podcast at the beginning of the offseason to talk about like ranking pure scorers. I think I have to amend those rankings because I think Jalen Brunson's got to be in the top 3. There's just so many mouths to feed. And I this was my thinking last year, and then everybody got hurt, so it kind of upended it. Not that I would have won that bet anyway, but like, I just think that this team, there's going to be more nights where Brunson doesn't have to do a ton. And if you have the occasional 16 or 18 or 21 point night, it starts to offset all the ones where you go, into the 30s and even the 40s. I'm going under. I'm going to
take the under as well. And I agree.
Oh, wow.
Because if you look at the opening lineup for last year's team, it was Jalen Brunson, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. Very different from what we're about to see now. And I feel as though the usage of other players, but not just the usage, the efficiency and the ability to create more opportunities is going to benefit the Knicks overall. I just don't know if it's going to propel Jalen Brunson to averaging at least 1.3 points more per game. Now, it makes sense if the Knicks have more high octane offense, more efficient. I just wonder if, to your point, John, that is carried by other players as well, and Jalen Brunson doesn't have to do quite as much. I think that 28 is around where he'll end up. It's really hard also to average over 30 points a game in the NBA. And I'm not saying Jalen Brunson cannot do it. I just would gather, especially if the Knicks start blowing out opponents, are they going to be playing less? If they're playing less, does that impact Jalen Brunson's points per game? All of that. So I will indeed take the under.
I just want to say before we move on, last season, if we take the games through January 27th, which is when Julius Randle and OG Anunoby went down with injuries, through that date, Jalen Brunson was averaging 26.6 points per game. I think that is, I'm not saying he's going to average that low. I agree with you. It's going to be somewhere around 20, 28 point whatever. But like, I think that was more representative of what he's going to be on a team with like another couple of legit scores. After January 27th, it was him, and then it was like Dante and like Josh Hart was like the third guy on the totem pole. The guy hasn't even taken a shot. He didn't take a shot last night and hasn't scored in the preseason. That's how different things were and how kind of bereft they were of offensive talent, which obviously they have more of now.
That's really what the bet is. Do you think he can average 30 a game? 28 points per game is still a lot, but
it is.
I understand why you guys went the direction you did, because it would have been very bold to say that Jalen Brunson becomes, I believe, the first Knick ever, John, to average 30 a game.
Bernard King did it in the year that he got cut short by injury, where I believe he played 55 games and tore his ACL.
And won the scoring title. You are correct. The next one is about one of his new teammates, and specifically the 3-point volume that one Karl Anthony Towns might have this season. So, how many 3-point attempts per game will Karl Anthony Towns average this season? The Claudio Casino line is 7.9.
7.9. Okay, you're first on this one.
7.9 is a lot.
I'll tell you, it's the first. It's the most. So his career high, and I'm assuming this is why Andrew said it at this. His career high is 7.9 per game, but it's his career high by a lot, because the next one after that is 6.3.
I'm going to take the under on this. I think it'll be closer to 6.5, 7, but it will be. I think the threes he's going to take, there will be more in volume, but they will also be. It'll be the quality, because the ability now for the Knicks to do a lot of pick and pop is great, but I think there's going to be a lot more pick and roll. And if you do indeed have Towns at the 5, and you don't have someone, say like a Mitchell Robinson type, sitting in the dunker spot, the amount of space that opens up for cutting and any other movement, not just by Towns, but really Josh Hart, for example, that I think will impact them quite a bit. Of course, that would give Towns more of an opportunity to take those threes, but I'd also love because of his threat, to do that extra pass to find, OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges in the corner from the above the break point. So I'm going to still say under, but there's definitely room for Towns to get over what was, I shot 5.3 and 5.7 and 4.9 the last 3 years respectively. So I think he will definitely exceed those, but 7.9 feels a little bit rich.
So I think it's a good line. Again, Andrew's very good at this. My fingers worked just fast enough. That 7.9 3-point attempts per game by Karl Anthony Towns is the most that a center has ever averaged in NBA history. The next highest is Kristaps Porzingis, averaged 7.1 in the 1920 season for Dallas, played 57 games. And then after that, you have to go down to Jaren Jackson Jr., who averaged 6.5 3-point attempts per game for the Grizzlies in 1920. And my guess is that he probably played a decent amount of power, at least some power forward during that season, which not to say Towns might not play power forward some this season. I like the spirit of the line. It's too high for me also. So we're going to have to be 2 for 2 in alignment. There were 20 players who averaged 7.9 or more 3-point attempts per game last season. And the only big guy was Lauri Markkanen, but I'm not sure Towns is going to Markkanen fires away. Is Towns really going to be putting him up at that volume? I think he'll be over 7. I don't think we're getting over 7.9.
I'll just add the other calculation that the house made in creating this line was 2 years ago when Julius Randle averaged 8.3 3-point attempts per game. And if you're subbing one for the other and one's a better shooter, potentially that's where the formula comes from. Where I was curious where you guys would go is because that was a team with Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein and RJ Barrett and much worse spacing involved, or just worse shooters, or honestly just less shooters in general because they were playing with true centers. So Julius almost had to do what he did.
I thought you were going to say do the offensive rebounding because the Knicks don't have nearly as much right now, especially with Mitch's health. So if Cat is shooting a lot of those shots, unless he's following his own shot, it's pretty much up to Josh Hart and OG Anunoby to collect those boards. And there's just less of an emphasis on that.
I'm also going to use the same logic I did for Brunson. There will be games where Towns puts up 9, 10, 11, 12 threes. And then there will be games where he puts up 3 or 4. For instance, if they're playing a bad team and they go up early, he's not we know what he wants to do. He wants to drive. He will shoot. And that's what's been awesome about this preseason. He's been a willing shooter, but I think it's going to be a little bit lower than that.
Well, speaking of the rebounding, as you guys mentioned, there's a guard/forward/wing, but don't tell him what position that he is because he'll just tell you he's a guard. Damn it. Josh Hart, we're going to ask, now that he's a starter, how many rebounds per game will Josh Hart average this season? The Claudio Casino line is 9.5. The thought process behind the line that the house created here, after said January 27th date that John mentioned earlier, when OG Anunoby and Julius Randle went out and Josh Hart became a full-time starter, Josh Hart averaged 11.6 rebounds per game. Gentlemen, over under 9.5 rebounds per game for Josh Hart this season.
Josh Hart is how tall?
6'4"?
6'4".
Okay. Last season averaged 8.3 rebounds per game. Okay. That was my fingers are fast today, friends. That was the 21st highest rebounds per game average in NBA history for a player 6'4" or less. A lot of the repeat names come on the list ahead of him. Obviously, there's a lot of Russ. Russ averaged 10 or more rebounds per game 4 times in his career. Paul Arizin did it a bunch of times. Lafat Lever did it a bunch of times. And Cliff Hagan, who is a Hall of Famer who I got to say I'm not terribly familiar with the works of Cliff Hagan, probably because he started his career in the 50s. Back when I
completely familiar with him.
I was about to back. You know what it is? I wasn't taking as diligent in notes back in those days when I was watching Hagan and his fellow. Yeah. I don't know what team he played for. St. Louis used to have a basketball team. Let's go with that. So 9.5 is an interesting number. If it was 9.9, I think I would have been like, nah, I think he just falls short. I could see Josh Hart screwing around and doing this. I'm going to spice it up. I'm going to go over. I think he's just going to get, again, I'm kind of using inverse logic. I'm going back and forth at the same point. So what's the least amount of rebounds Josh Hart's ever going to get in a game on this team, provided he plays the minutes that we think he's going to play? 5, 6, 7, 5 or 6, like that. That rare you're going to see a Josh Hart game where he gets less than that. It's that's the standard every night. 5, 6, somewhere around there. And then he's going to get his games where he's up 14, 15, 16, 17. Like he could do that. He's capable of that. So it's a good line. I wish it was 8.9 and not 9.5. If it was 8.9, I would definitely go over. This makes me hem and haw a little bit, but I'm going to, I'll spice it up. I'll go over.
I'll spice it down. I'll go under.
You're no fun.
Yeah. Well, we got it. What would be even more no fun is if we just agreed every step of the way. So I appreciate you taking that spicy take because I'm going to pull it back a little bit. I think that's a significantly high number for someone who's 6'4". And I know that that's the role that he's playing, but there's also the question of OG Anunoby, for example, historically not been a great rebounder. With that said, it comes down to positioning. How has OG been positioned to, like, has he been in the best position to do that? If he's had a lot of responsibility of point of attack or coming away from the rim, then it's going to be harder for him to get rebounds. Mikal Bridges, tremendous amount of wingspan there too. I think he's going to get some more boards based on switching and all that. I think Hart will get his, absolutely. I don't believe it will be just shy or greater than double digits. You're right. There are going to be games where he does have 13, 14, even 15 or more rebounds per game. But even if you have those 5, 6, 7, you then have to sway so hard in the other direction of gobbling up boards that it gets you past 9.5. So I like how ambitious Andrew is with these lines. I don't want to seem like a Debbie Downer. I just think that they are a little too optimistic. I'm still optimistic, but just not quite at that level. So I'm going to go with the under.
I like it.
Well, we're going to put that optimism or pessimism to the test with this next one. These next three lines are all about games played for three different players. Oof. We start with Mitchell Robinson and specifically how the line is read. How many games will Mitchell Robinson play for the Knicks this season? The Claudio Casino line is 19.5.
This is you, Jeremy.
Yes, it is. I'm going to go with under. I'm going to take the under. I just health, durability, but also availability in terms of I still see the February deadline as a time for Mitchell Robinson to be a prime trade candidate. And if you consider that Mitchell Robinson comes back in 2025, and if you also believe that he's going to be dealt before the trade deadline, then I haven't looked at it, but I would probably guess it's almost impossible for him to hit 20 games in that time frame of, even if it was January 1st to February 8th, 7th, whatever 6th date that is. So I'm going to go with the under because I just don't think it's, if I'm coming from a point, which I am, of he gets dealt by the deadline, and if we're starting from the point of he can't be healthy until the start of the new year, I just think it's impossible. I also think the idea of re-aggravating an injury or him not being able to play back-to-backs, whatever it might be, makes that incredibly tough. So under it is.
I think that salary slot is too valuable for them to continue to use it on a player that they have doubts about whether or not he's going to be there and ready, willing, and able to help them in the way that a team competing for a championship needs to be helped. I would struggle to imagine a scenario where Robinson comes back and, like, in that short period of time proves, like, dispels any and all doubts to the point where they could have so, and I mean, unless there's just nothing on the table for him and they don't like anything out there for what the salary could get them, but like, which is possible. Like, there's gonna be a lot of teams competing this year. A lot of teams are gonna be looking for upgrades. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like just because the Knicks make him available before the deadline, there's gonna be a deal there. But I'm gonna go with you. I think there's just too much. The odds are too much in favor of him being moved before the trade deadline for me at this point to take the over on this.
Another thing, just to quickly add, there are, by my count, and your mileage may vary here, 9 teams that are very interested in not winning many games. And if you're looking at ways to move salary around, if about a third of the league is saying we're cool not winning games, and if Mitchell Robinson is still not healthy or not able to play very much,
that's another.
There's appeal there. And the Knicks, in a season where we know they've given up, I mean, we keep saying they've gone all in. They haven't fully, but they're close. I just don't see them not pushing their chips in even further, which extends itself to movement. But or we can explore Mitchell Robinson trades and possibilities not before the season starts.
And if you're said crap team, you get the benefit of whatever the Knicks give you in addition to Mitch to go for whatever player the Knicks are targeting. Again, not that the Knicks have a ton to give up, but something. And then fast forward a year, you get to flip Mitchell Robinson's expiring contract to some contender who's like, oh, wait, we could get this guy off of our bench for 15 to 20 minutes a night to like be awesome. I think there might be a more maybe robust, in that sense that you're describing. That's such a great point. A more robust sense or a robust market for him than maybe we think.
How low would I have had to make the line for you guys to take the over? Because I dabbled with 9.5. I dabbled with 0.5.
I think the absolute lowest probably would have been 9.5.
Okay, so 9.5. So
even then,
games.
I would have been tempted to say under.
The trade deadline is February 6th, right?
I think so. It's a Thursday. John's counting for those listening.
I mean, anything over 9.5, I probably would have taken the under. If you started going around like single digits, I probably would have had to think a little bit harder about it.
There are 18 games that the Knicks play between January 1st and the deadline.
I don't think he's going to be back January 1st. So that's
right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, someone else that may have some injury history that the Knicks have to be concerned with. OG Anunoby. How many games will OG Anunoby play for the Knicks this season? The Claudio Casino line is 49.5.
Not even thinking twice about this. Give me the over. I'm being optimistic. I'm not going to sit here on, what is today? October 14th and say that OG Anunoby is playing less than 50 games. F that. No. Over.
I will also be taking the over.
Thank God.
Yeah, and I understand why there's concern, and I'm fully expecting him to miss 10, 15 games a year, something of that ilk. But yeah, to say, hey, he's missing 30 plus games before game one, like for my own mental health, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to take the under.
I personally love the optimism here. This is someone who hasn't played 50 games often in the last couple of years, and I love the thought of him playing 60 plus games because, as we learned last year, the Knicks don't lose when OG Anunoby plays for them. So hopefully that trend continues. The last one's a fun one. So are either of you aware, and if you are, I'm just asking so you could tell the audience, how many games has Mikal Bridges missed in his career?
Games has he missed?
Yeah.
Is it not zero?
So you didn't catch on that I was asking a trick question, that of the 473 available games that he would have played in his 7 NBA seasons, he actually played one more. He played 474 games in his career. So this is an Iron Man of sorts, hasn't missed a game since high school. And now he's playing for one Tom Thibodeau. It's a match made in heaven, right? Claudio Casino line asks, how many games will Mikal Bridges play for the Knicks this season? The line is 81.5.
I knew you were going to do this.
It's you, man. Jeremy. It's easy.
Yeah. I mean, this is the tricky part because the evidence tells us the over, but it just takes one single game for him, health and safety protocol or like just get tripped up the wrong way. I'm gonna go with the under. I don't like that I'm going with the under, but and look, if this is something where it winds up being 82, and my whole thought process was, man, he missed 80 or he missed 2 games, like that's fine. It's kind of a win-win for me either way. So I'm gonna say he plays 81 games, and I'll take the under.
There you go.
I'm trying to parse because he was asked, or he brought up the AC Green streak the other day, and he basically brushed it off like No, that streak's not getting broken. I'm not like that's crazy. So I'm trying to like decipher. Does this streak mean something to him? I mean, obviously it means something to him. Does it mean a lot to him? Does it mean enough to him where, he's going to try to keep it going, even if it may not be in his own personal best health interest? Then again, I don't know that there's ever been a situation in his career where he has like put his health on the line to play, because I think if you hear him talk about it, he talks about his like thin bones and like, they were talking about it on the broadcast last night. He just hasn't been in a situation where he's been like, I probably shouldn't play in this game, but I got the streak, so I'm going to play anyway.
1 second. For those who have no idea what John's talking about, former Los Angeles Laker NBA veteran AC Green holds the record for consecutive games played with 1,192. So Mikal Bridges is about a little more than 60% of the way.
Yeah. I no, he's not 60% of the way.
Am I off? He's closer to 40%. I'm bad at math. I usually let the calculator do it.
He's like
Maybe,
over a third away.
40, yeah, he's like
over a third. It's closer to 40%.
Yeah, he's about 40% of the way. He's got a ways to go. He's not halfway there yet. You know what? If I could be optimistic, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to choose to be optimistic here. I'm going over.
So next up, we go to one more individual player prop, which actually combines two players. So we mentioned guys might miss time, which means next man up, as we saw last year when the very many next men were up and stepped up last season. Two of those players being Miles McBride and Precious Achiuwa. The next line you guys are going to be making picks on: how many games will Miles McBride and Precious Achiuwa combine to start this upcoming season? The Claudio Casino line is set at 49.5. And if you're wondering how many these two played or started last season, Miles McBride last year started, as soon as I can get to it, Miles McBride started 14 last year. Precious Achiuwa started 18. So it's 32 total.
Was it me first or Jeremy?
I believe it's you.
Okay. So this would... I'm going to talk this out for a second. I just predicted that I bet that Mikal Bridges would play 82 games. Okay. Josh Hart, barring something crazy, unforeseen, is going to play the vast majority of games. So really, we're talking about three players, right? We're talking about Towns, OG, and Jalen Brunson. I just scoffed, I did, at the thought of OG playing less than 50 games, which means I'm, being cautiously optimistic about, that number is somewhere in the 60s, let's say. So maybe even high 60s. Let's be optimistic and say Towns is in the high 60s. So right there, that's combined missed games for the two of them. It's about 30. Again, Hart could miss games, Mikal could miss games. I think I have no reason not to be optimistic about the health, so I'm going to be optimistic about the health standpoint. And the fact that, I'm not 1,000% sure sitting here right now that if, for argument's sake, Brunson has to sit games, are we sure that Campaign isn't going to get those starts instead of Deuce McBride? I don't know. Or for that matter, Tyler Kolek, and then the bench stays intact or something crazy like that. The notion that it's automatically going to be Deuce starting, I agree. It's the incredible likelihood that is going to be the case, whatever it is. But my doubt there, and by the way, we're not 100% sure that Precious Achiuwa is going to be on this team after February 6th because of his salary and the value. So I think there's just too many things going on here. I'm going to go under, although I again, good job by Andrew in setting the line.
I think that's all really sound logic. I agree. Overall, I'm going to take the under. The other thought here is perhaps even if there's an opening, that Tom Thibodeau just loves Deuce McBride coming off of the bench and keeps it that way. Perhaps if Karl-Anthony Towns gets hurt, that instead of Precious Achiuwa starting, you see, 15, 18 minutes of Jericho Sims. Because the one thing that I saw at the game, just the sheer fact that Precious Achiuwa he was playing 4. And we know that Tibbs has said in the past that he likes playing him at 4. So if there's a player who's missing time, are they going to be so quick to plug Precious Achiuwa in because of how versatile that rotation can be? It really depends on what they want to get out of it as well. It depends on which player is getting hurt, to your point. If Jalen Brunson is hurt, I would imagine Cameron Payne is starting games as opposed to Deuce, just based on perhaps how they like running the offense.
He's a truer point guard,
right? Exactly. So I think the point about Precious potentially not being on this team is incredibly valid. We've talked about how he's signed a 1-year contract. That doesn't also mean that he has to be traded. The Knicks still have his bird rights. There's of course the question of, for the following season, the second apron, and if they want to pay Precious to bring him back. I ultimately, as of this one moment right now on October 14th, could see him just sticking it out. I know I've said in the past the idea of, hey, it was only 1 year, easy to flip him, but there's the thought process as well of how, like, what his role is. Do they actually see him as, he defended Embiid pretty well in the playoffs? Is that someone that they want to have, especially if they've got Cat, who did go toe-to-toe with Jokic and some other Titans in the West? So I'm still going to take the under because I think that 49.5 is a lot of games. With that said, it just takes, 10 games of both of them starting for that number to be cut almost in half. But I think 49.5 is a little rich. So I'll go under.
Yeah, I think it's a smart line. But 2 unders.
Well, it's the last line that involves players. And now we go to the full team and your picks for this season. So we will start with an ambitious one. 3-point volume. How many, that's written incorrectly. How many 3-point field goals will the Knicks make this season? The Claudio Casino line is 1,100. A little history for the both of you. So in Knicks history, they have made 1,000 3-pointers in a season 3 different times. That would be the last 3 seasons that they've done this. In 22, it was 1082. Then 2 years ago, Jalen Brunson's first year, it was 1037. And then last year, it was 1083. So last year's team beat their previous record by 1 from 2 years earlier. So I'm basically asking, will they break it again? And will they get 17 more to be the first Knicks team ever to get 1,100 3-pointers in a season?
I'm going to say they break it. Now, here's the thing, though. They did lose Dante DiVincenzo. And that is going to be big for this. Of course, it's still jarring to see centers do what Karl Anthony Towns does in a Knicks uniform. I'm still not quite used to that. I think another wild card here is the fate of Mitchell Robinson, where if you turn Mitchell Robinson into a position player who shoots threes, kind of like how last year, the Knicks got Bojan Bogdanovic. That's really what he does. And Alec Burks, who's very good at shooting threes. So they've clearly shown a willingness to add that type of player. And I ultimately think that they could do that, which would bolster that even more. So I'll be optimistic on this one, and I will take the over, but I do think that losing Dante will have an impact. But again, you gain time and talent in other ways. So the Knicks had Mikal Bridges, and last year they started off the season with RJ Barrett. That's not really, at least it wasn't his bread and butter while he was here in New York. So I think they do it.
This is the first one that's pretty easy for me. This is going to be an easy over. Last season, I'll ask you, Jeremy, do you want to take a stab at how many threes the Boston Celtics made last year?
I'll say 1175.
You're a bit off. It is 1,351. But in your defense, the number that you said was pretty close to the second place number. The Warriors made 1,211. So I'm not even sure if it's fair to bring up the Boston Celtics because they lapped the fields. Like the distance between them and the number 2 Warriors was the same as the distance between like the Warriors and like the Knicks, who were I think in 10th. Are the Knicks going to put it up like the Celtics did last year? No, they're not. But I think you really nailed. You were kind of skirting on something about like you think about how many players played significant minutes for the Knicks last year. that were just not putting up threes or didn't want to put up threes, like Josh Hart, Precious Achiuwa, Isaiah Hartenstein, obviously. If you go back to before the trade, like, maybe that wasn't always RJ's thing that he wanted to do, like Julius Randle, like this team, and not even just the starters, like last night, like OG's firing away, Mikal Bridges, we know he's going to fire away and all that. But like Campaign's been pulling up like it's nobody's business. And Deuce McBride, we know he's going to do that as well. Landry Shamet, my God, I forgot about Landry Shamet. Yeah, this is easy for me. I not to say it's definitely going to happen, but I think if this line was more like 1150, it would have been a little tougher. But 1100, that's going to be an easy over for me.
Love the optimism that we have in this upcoming season. Let's see if that continues with 20-point wins. So how many 20-point wins will the Knicks have this upcoming season? The line is 13.5. And the reason that line is the way it is.
This is why you texted me.
It is why I texted you. So in Knicks history, twice have they had more than 13 20-point wins in a season. It was the 72-73 team that won the NBA title and the 69-70 team that won the NBA title. The other time that they had at least 13 20-point wins was last season. Every other year in their franchise history, it's been less than 13 20-point wins. So I ask you, gentlemen, are we trending toward the title teams? Are we trending toward better than last year?
So what was it last year?
13.
It was exactly 13.
They had 13 20-point wins last season. And the two other times that they've had at least 13, which was 19 each in 69-70 and 72-73.
And this is me first. Okay. No, I'm not gonna have time to do that. I was gonna count up how many times they played all of the dregs of the league, but it's enough.
I'm literally doing that now. So
yeah, no, you could do it. It's enough. My glass half empty Macri take on this is that I'm worried enough about the bench that I'm wondering how many games there are going to be where the bench comes in, they are up by a significant number of points in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, and maybe does the bench let the other team back in the game? But then again, if that happens, what's Tibbs going to do? Is he going to let the lead continue to whittle down? No, he's not. He's going to bring his starters back in, and I'll go over.
I'll take the over as well. It's hard to argue about how many teams are going to be waving the white flag for Cooper flag, and feel like
the white Cooper flag.
Well, I mean, it's what he is. He's
John. I'm gonna throw you out there. I've been making this joke on Patreon for like a month now. I swear to God, man. This is a very common joke in the NBA Twitter circle.
Not to me.
Apparently, when on pods you're on, it's not even common to you.
I don't think it ever, whatever way you're doing it, it never hit me in the way.
You're right. I shouldn't say it into a microphone in front of your face. You're right.
This is a real high on pot news situation.
It is high on.
People listening to this episode must think we're all out. Well, at least I'm high, and probably you too, Jeremy.
Jeremy, that was good.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm not the one who just repeated the joke that Andrew's been making for ages.
I mean the white Cooper flag. Yes, the white flag. Exactly.
You know, I have a lot of stuff on my mind. That's all.
Apparently, while you're podcasting with me.
Andrew, maybe if you had been clear about the joke, then John would have gotten it the first time. It's actually your fault.
My fault.
Not John's.
100% my fault.
Yep.
Yes. I should do.
Hold on.
I know you have like all these podcasts you do and all these content pieces that you're working on, John. So
you should be clear.
Hold on. Brief aside, my wife said to me yesterday, she's like, should we order? She was asking me about like we're talking about Scarlett in one of her classes. And she's like, should we order this review book? Or, oh no, she's like, well, that's why I was thinking about this review book. And my response was like, absolutely, order the review book right now. It's a great idea. And she's like, I literally asked you yesterday should we order this review book for Scarlett? And you're like, no, don't do that. Meaning me. And I'm like, I didn't say that. She's like, yes, you did. And she's like, I think sometimes I have conversations with you where you're not even there. And now you're telling me this. I don't really know what to make of all this.
Some people just have a mute button that they don't realize they've pressed because their focus is elsewhere. It's okay.
How does anybody deal with me? Sorry.
It pays well. I'm kidding. Jeremy, you're up.
Jeremy, you were you?
Now you get to do a Sam Mitchell, or I do. I'm gonna take the over. Just a lot of bad teams, a lot of good nights, a lot of sweet shooting. So let's hit that over.
There you go. Well done.
The white flag prize at the end of this draft is why I thought the over was a good bet, because the Knicks did it last year when there was no flag at the end of the draft.
That's true.
And now with teams exponentially trying to be worse, that chance goes up. The next line potentially involves Jalen Brunson, but maybe other guys have big nights. How many times will a Knicks score 40 points in a game this season? The Claudio Casino line is 13.5. Last season, the Knicks did this 13 times exactly.
Oof, this is a tough one.
It's
also challenging because, well, a couple things. First off, Julius Randle missed half the season, and the Knicks were still able to do 13.
He did. I will say Julius Randle did it once. Dante DiVincenzo did it once. The other 11 are Jalen Brunson.
Yes. So it's really a question of, can Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns combine for more, or have 40-point games combined 14 times? I'm going to say, I'm going to say yes. But it because I feel like if I say no, it goes against what I've talked about beforehand with the high offense across the board. I mean, it's a real question. Do you see OG Anunoby getting a 40-point game? I think it's unlikely. Do you see Mikal Bridges? I think it's unlikely.
No.
I don't see it being Deuce. So actually it really comes down to Brunson and to Cat. You know what? I think talking it through, I'm going to go under. I'm going to take the under, especially because if I'm saying that I don't see Brunson hitting 29.9, this would catapult him most likely. I think we're going to see a lot of 30 plus games, but I think 14 might be a bridge too far, especially if there are these big blowouts. And a lot of that might come down to the defense as well. So I've gone back and now I'm going to go under.
So you know what's wild is Towns has had he's had two 60-point games in his career. He had the famous one last year that got certainly a lot of attention where he scored 62. It looked like he was on pace for, it looked like he was on pace for 80 at one point. And then 2 years before that, he scored 60 on the dot. In both of those seasons, there was only one other game where he reached the 40-point mark. So last season, he scored exactly 40, and then the 62-point game, and his next highest game was 33. The year before last season, so the 22-23 season, he only played in 29 games, never scored over 30 points. His season high was 30. The year before that, again, 60 points, and then a 40-point game, and then nothing else over 40. And then the year before that, he had one game out of 50 where he topped 40, and it was 41. It's like when he gets going, and then other than that, he's just kind of like hanging in like the 20s, maybe in the 30s. But if he gets going 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Question for you, because I know you've just done the research. Didn't the Wolves lose that game to the Hornets?
Yes.
And of course, we know how well Brunson did with 40-point games, so I'm cherry picking here, but his season high and also career high was also a loss to the Spurs. Not saying one individual talent or performance means that it hurts the team, but just wondering, is it the sort of thing where when everybody eats, but no one eats so much, does it Is it kind of a strength in numbers sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's the right line. I'm joining you. I'm going under. This might be the toughest. I'm going under. I'm going under. I think it's really tough. I think it's a really good line. Really good, really good line. If it was like 11.5, I'd go over easily.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. The next one is a staple here on Claudio Casino. How many All-Stars will the Knicks have this season? The Claudio Casino line is 1.5. There's a minus on the screen, but it's just a dash. So 1.5 All-Stars this year. The Knicks have hit the over on this once in the last couple seasons, which was last year.
They did. Oh yeah, that's right. Before last year, the previous time was when Chandler and Melo made it, right? So yeah, that was a while back. I mean, I'm just looking at the East. I think it's if you don't think anybody from Detroit, Washington, Brooklyn, Chicago, any of those teams are going to get a guy in. I mean, maybe LaMelo makes a little bit of a run for it in Charlotte. We'll see. Toronto, I mean, maybe there might be a run from Barnes or one of the former Knicks. We'll see, although the RJ injury doesn't help that. Atlanta, Trae Young could always make a run, but I don't think, looking at the East, I don't think the East is so stacked where I feel like, man, it's going to be an incredible uphill climb for us to get to. I think the Knicks are going to be really good. And this is not like a no-brainer for me, but I don't think I've ever picked the over on this one, and I'm going to pick the over now. I think they'll get to.
I'll take the over as well. I do think that someone like Cade Cunningham, though, could jockey for that.
It's an interesting one.
I mean, the way I see it with him, if it doesn't happen, the season's probably not happening. But he's got more talent around him, so maybe there's an opportunity for him to cook a little bit more. But when you look around the rest of the league, I mean, yes, I'd say how someone like Tyrese Halliburton, for example, his legacy has improved. But then we saw someone like Trae Young. I believe, didn't Trae Young not?
Trae Young has made the All-Star team 3 times. I would not have thought it was that many, but I just looked it up.
Including last season.
So then that would add to hey, when you have a long playoff run, it kind of helps your legacy and creates more of an opportunity. So now we've got Tyrese Halliburton jumping in there as well. The Heat, for example, wild card, you never really know. Are they going to be able to send 1, 2? It's hard to not have Bam, but also hard to not have Jimmy Butler. It's a popularity contest at a certain point. So I do still think it'll be 2, just because also if we believe the Knicks will have a good team, that they would be rewarded for that. The best teams often are, but I could see Giannis and Dame making it, and their record maybe doesn't even impact them, but it's just that star reputation that gets them to where they need to be.
You know why this is tough? Because just very briefly, 2 Celtics, Jalen Brunson, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Donovan Mitchell, Paolo Banchero, Tyrese Halliburton, 2 Sixers, 1 Heat. That's 10 already. We're at 10, and that's not accounting for any of the bottom 7 teams in the East. It's not accounting for a 3rd Celtics. It's not accounting for Dame. It's not accounting for a 2nd Magic, a 2nd Cav, a 2nd Pacer, a 3rd Sixer, a 2nd member of the Heat. Like, the competition is there. So I do think it is pretty optimistic to say 2. I'm going to stick by it, but I think it's going to be tough.
Keep in mind, though, we're having it at how many slots?
12, right?
12.
And there's injury replacements and that stuff.
The injury replacements, that's a big thing. I'm sure that Julius Randle, they gave him the nod. He deserved it, in my opinion, but it helped. Whereas we know he's not going to play. Give him that honor, and then we just move on to the next guy, because then that way no one feels slighted.
One more line that pertains to individual player success, or at least awards, and it's another staple that we've done in the past. How many top 5 awards finishes will the Knicks have this season? The Claudio Casino line is 3.5. I should have made this 2.5, but I'll make it 3.5 to be optimistic about this season, especially since last year they finished with 3. Jalen Brunson finished top 5 in MVP, Most Improved Player, and the Clutch Player of the Year award.
So just thinking this through, first off, I think Coach of the Year. Are we counting Tom Thibodeau?
Yep,
great.
That counts.
Great. So that's, I believe, 1 for a top 5 finish. We know that Rookie of the Year is not something that the Knicks are likely to get. Apologies to Tyler Kolek and Pacom Dadier and Ariel Hakporti. Other than that, I don't think the Clutch Award could be there. I'm confident, at least optimistic, I should say, that Brunson is top 5 in the MVP voting again, especially if their record is there. Usually you kind of need that one other season to catapult you. Don't think Cat is going to be in that category. There's a 6th man of the year conversation for someone like Deuce McBride.
That's an interesting one.
I'm trying to think if there's any most improved player award that the Knicks would qualify for, but I don't think so. Nobody's
even listed among the top, like, we were looking at the odds after the game, I think yesterday, and there's nobody with like better than 50-1 odds. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think if this line were 2.5, to Andrew's point, I would take the over, but 3.5 would imply 4. Hard to find 4 point. Are we counting defensive player? Well, we actually
we're counting defensive player of the year. Sure.
Yes, of course.
So then there's the question of OG Anunoby
and games
if you
played.
feel he could be, and then the games played.
Or right. Mikal Bridges.
Finished second in this award. Once upon a time.
So you know what? I'll go. I will go with the over. I will take the over of 4 because with those additional players, and if we're saying, hey, they're gonna finish with this many games that they should be able to qualify.
For clarification purposes, the awards that are eligible here: MVP, Most Improved Player, MVP, Most Improved Player, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, 6th Man of the Year, Clutch Player of the Year. So it's those 6 awards. And Jeremy,
plus Coach of the Year, but also are we going to talk about
Coach of the Year?
And hold on, there's one more that I think we got to include here, which is Executive of the Year
and Executive of the Year.
Okay. And I think if we're including Executive of the Year, that we've seen executives who have made giant changes to their roster be rewarded, which means that I absolutely could see the Knicks finishing top 5 from a front office perspective in voting.
So you're still going under?
No, now I'm going to go over. And by the way, Tom Thibodeau finished 5th last year. So the Knicks actually did have 4 last season.
What I don't like about this is there's 6 realistic possibilities, and I think you just named all of them. Tibbs, Leon Rose, Deuce, OG, or Mikal. And I think it's probably going to be OG if it's going to be anyone. And then Mikal MVP or Brunson MVP, Brunson Clutch. There's no possibilities for like a few of the other ones. Like they're not getting any, they're not getting Most Improved. They're not getting Rookie. By
the way, just while John thinks this out, Leon Rose finished 4th last year in Executive of the Year. So we're now up to 5 as Jeremy. You just beat the house, I think, because the house didn't even consider Executive of the Year.
If this has been 2.5, I
think the exec nudges it for me. So I feel queasy about this, but I'm going to go over also.
Okay. We have 2 overs in this sense, which brings us to our final 3 Claudio Casino lines of the day or night or whenever you're listening to this. We start. How many games will the Knicks win this season? The Claudio Casino line, which matches many a sportsbook, is 54.5.
We've talked about this, Andrew. Me and you certainly on, I think probably Patreon.
Are you sure we've talked about this? You remember that?
That's okay. I deserve that. I've hemmed and hawed about this. You could tell me they win 56, 57. You could tell me they win 50, 51. Obviously, this falls right in between those 2 ranges. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to go over. If I'm optimistic about health sitting here today, there's no reason I shouldn't be optimistic about the win total. So I'm going to go over. Barely.
I'm going to go barely under.
That's fine.
I think it's 54. Like that's the number that stands out to me. So if
Great
it's 54 and a half, then right. And I mean, we're talking about a team that's still probably second or third overall at least certainly in the East, which is great. I'd sign up for 54 wins, 100%. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to be optimistic even more so. It's the kind of feeling though, where like I have high hopes for this team. They are a contender in my book. It almost feels like it is about this year. It's about the next handful of years. But to me, it feels like, not to move goalposts, but it's like they've got a great chance this year and you never want to take anything for granted. But on paper, it's the following year where I think they can bolster their case even more because they did have to relinquish some of their bench and, to get top end talent. Look at a team like the Suns. The Suns made a big trade and then they needed another season to just kind of get Tyus Jones, draft Ryan Dunn if that shot comes around. Like they just need to inch kind of their way over and have guys mature. So I think for a year one of this is our contender, if you don't count last year, 54 wins is totally acceptable. Great season. And then just kill it in the playoffs. So I'll go a hair under.
Well, speaking of the playoffs, Jeremy, let's talk about the standings a little bit. How many teams will finish ahead of the Knicks in the standings this year? The Claudio Casino line is 3.5, which means if you take the under, you're saying that the Knicks will finish top 4.
So just to be clear, in the East or in the league?
In the East standings, it says.
Oh, in the East standings? I think.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under if it's the East. I envision the Knicks as a top 3 seed this year.
Okay.
Easy one for me too. Top 3 seed in the East. Yeah.
Okay. I love to hear it. Then the last one, probably the highest line and the biggest line that we've had so far in the history of Claudio Casino. How many playoff games will the Knicks win this season? The Claudio Casino line is 8.5, which, just doing the math, if you take the over, you're saying this team will make the conference finals this year. Might get swept if you want to take the under and be that pessimistic about it. But they'd have to win 8. And then if they win one game in the conference finals, you would have them hitting the over.
Is it me first? This is an over for me. With the caveat that last season, as we've talked about, and I do remember that we've talked about this, the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks had 2 of the highest over-under win totals. They had 2 of the 4 lowest, or the best, whatever you want to call it, championship odds. And those 2 teams combined to win 2 playoff games, I think, right? Because the Suns got swept and the Bucks won 2. So the notion that the Knicks are some sort of lock to win 9 or 10 or 12 or whatever playoff games, it's ridiculous. They're not a lock to win any playoff games. Like, these NBA seasons are wars of attrition. Players seem to get hurt more now than ever. And, you get it. It's just crazy stuff happens. All that said, I think they have as good an infrastructure as just about any team in the league. And I do trust the culture still, even after the seismic trades of this offseason. So if they're, the only 2 teams that would be a better bet for me to win this many playoff games, at least this many playoff games, would be Boston and Oklahoma City. And I'm not even 1,000% sure that I would take Oklahoma City because the West is so difficult, even though I think the Thunder are a better team than the Knicks. So it's going to be an over for me.
I'll take the over as well. It was 6 games that they won, and then it was 7. So now it would be 8, which means they would get swept in the conference finals. But I'm not putting them evil. Right. Like that, I just don't see it unless they had gotten to a point. Like the only reason they would have gotten swept in last year's playoffs is if the Knicks had won Game 7 and yet still had lost all of their best players due to injury, in which case it would have been like, hey, yeah, they're throwing out their skeleton crew. Because you never know. Injuries clearly can decimate a team. Just look at last year's team. But if we all, call it hopium or copium if you want. Like if we look at what this team should have been last year, but wasn't due to injuries and then also feel like this team improved, then I feel like how can they not get to the conference finals? And it's pressure, of course, because I'm sure that Sixers fans would say, well, we got better too, and we're putting the Celtics in with permanent marker. So it's one or the other. But also, like my whole thing with Philly, how healthy are they going to be? They're a top 3 seed on paper. If when your star player comes out and says, I don't think I'm playing back-to-backs ever again in my career, means you're sacrificing some games. Just you have to be. And if you're doing that, that's going to hurt you in the standings. So it's possible that the Sixers get bumped to 4 or 5, and then the Knicks are a 2-3 seed. Sixers have to play the Celtics. You just never know. So, but I feel good about the Knicks this season. If we're assuming health, which we are, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm taking the over.
There we go.
And that concludes your Claudio Casino predictions, picks, lines, your visit to Claudio Casino for the 2024-2025 season.
We made a lot of the same picks, but lest anyone ever accuse us of saying anything for a hot take or whatever, like we don't do that here. But we did have a couple of disagreements, so there's that.
Yes.
Andrew, just to kind of reiterate, we did have some disagreements.
Oh, on which pod?
Well, I mean, specifically this one.
This one
is the one.
Okay.
Yeah, it just kind of dawned on me that we did have some disagreements.
Jeremy, what did you take for the Knicks to? How many playoff wins do you think they'll have this year? I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
Are we saying like over under? Or are
over
we saying
under? I'll set the line at 8.5. I should come up with this concept for like a fake casino.
That's a tough one
with alliteration. Claudio Casino. Oh, my name! Oh my gosh, that's why it's called Claudio Casino.
I'm going to go take my ADHD medication. Jeremy, this was a lot of fun. Andrew, I
love you. Okay.
I know. Thank you for the prep. I know you do a lot of prep for these episodes, and it shows because these lines, I mean, you really do. You nail the lines. You absolutely nail the lines. Look, the fact that these are the lines for a preseason episode like this says all you need to know about why every Knicks fan should be excited about what is to come. 3-0 in the preseason is nice too. And hopefully they keep it going, give us some more good basketball over the next week, and then giddy up, next Tuesday night, which is, I guess, will be in a week by the time people are listening to this. So everybody out there, thank you for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Let's go Mets. Let's go Yankees, because they're not playing each other right now, so I could say both of those things and not seem like an idiot. And we will be back very soon with more funny games. Peace out.